Thank you very much. General Kellogg, please.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, esteemed members of the committee, thank you for having me here today. I'm grateful to be able to offer my perspective, and I look forward to answering your questions. Among the many opportunities I've had in my life, none has been a greater privilege or a higher honor than wearing the uniform of the United States Army in nearly 4 decades of decorated service on behalf of this country. Much of that was combat service, including 2 tours in Vietnam, Operation Just Cause in Panama, the first Gulf War, and Iraq. I've had the privilege of being the commander of Special Operations Command Europe and the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. My military career is one of multiple aspects in my life that make my perspective on the war in Ukraine unique. The second is my service in the last administration on the National Security Council, the acting National Security Advisor to the President, and the National Security Advisor to the Vice President. And finally, a comprehensive 2-week visit I made last month to Ukraine. My trip to Ukraine was facilitated by the expertise of the Weatherman Foundation, founded by Bess Weatherman and Andrew Duncan, seated behind me today, and led by my daughter, West Point graduate Dr. Megan Mobbs. I visited the areas of battle near the line of contact in Kharkiv, Izium, Donetsk, and interfaced across the spectrum of military forces from senior decision makers to trigger pullers. In Bucha and Izium, I saw the firsthand consequences of unbridled Russian aggression and their willingness to kill innocents and use indiscriminate violence against children. My views today, which I offer today in my strictly personal capacity, are consistent with everything I have written and I have said throughout this conflict. To be clear, Russia's full-scale invasion was prefaced by a humiliating American withdrawal and defeat in Afghanistan that allowed Putin to believe he could launch a new war in Europe without a major response, much like he found in 2014 when he seized Crimea from Ukraine. Deterrence has failed, and this failure has been compounded by a willingness to use strong words unaccompanied by decisive and timely action. It is the incremental and halting of the American and allied response to the Russian invasion that persuades Putin he can drag out this war and count on time to be his friend and bring him to victory. It has been support sent in half measures and with hesitation, which succeeds in enabling the fighting of the war, but not the ending of it. This is important because ending the war needs to be the principal American effort. If we do not demonstrate leadership now, we risk being mired in another endless war. As with all wars, there will be negotiation between the warring parties. And so we must look forward to what will hasten those negotiations consistent with American honor and interest. It is clear the path to bringing about these negotiations is to rapidly increase Ukraine's lethality to enable Ukrainian forces to destroy currently committed Russian forces on the battlefield and disrupt their supply chain logistics. Putin must see that the fate of his army in the field in Ukraine is at risk of near total destruction. The reasons for American interest are many. The war threatens the American-led international order. We cannot be secure in our leadership role if we allow a war of regression to progress and persist in a major sovereign state with the potential of a Russian victory. Simply saying, whatever it takes, as long as it takes, is not policy, it's a slogan. One of the great maxims of warfare is, tactics without strategy is just a noise before defeat. No number of supplemental aid packages, no round of sanctions, nor a presidential visit to Kyiv will achieve success without a plan. The Ukraine war must end this year, but not any end will do. An end to the war in Ukraine must be defined with American interests at heart, and there must be a pathway to achieve it. This can be achieved by first providing Ukraine with all the military armament it needs to defeat the Russian army in Ukraine. The survival of Putin's army in the field must be put at risk, and you need to do it now. Second, the identification of an end state for how this war will end, with a roadmap to get there, must be communicated effectively to the American people. And third, our allies must do more, spend more, and do it more quickly. This war is in their backyard, and they cannot expect the citizens of the United States to continue to carry the overwhelming financial burden as they do today. All this is simple, but not easy. Let me be plain. Americans are right to ask the hard questions about why we are spending so much in Ukraine. Many of your own constituents, Americans with whom I've spoken and met, have legitimate concerns about our involvement in this war. We see a federal government that is eager to pour billions into the defense of Ukrainian borders while showing no real interest in the defense of American borders. From a strictly policy perspective, the correct answer is that American government is equipped to do both. As we enter the second year in Ukraine, we cannot continue the status quo. We need to work towards an end to this war and do so immediately and decisively. If this war turns into a multiple year of attrition, which is its present trajectory, then Americans may be asked to sacrifice more than they are willing to give, and Ukraine will lose. As it stands, the Ukrainian defeat is an American defeat by proxy. This cannot be tolerated. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, General. Dr. Stent, one of the issues that continually engages the planners and the statesmen and women who deal with this problem is